Hey, and welcome back to the Asher Review HQ, where we aim to bring the best in video game review content. The footage you're about to witness was recorded over at Twitch, where we're growing a lovely community, so consider stopping by and leaving a follow. And if you like what you see here, drop a like on the video, a comment stating any feedback or recommendations, and hit that subscribe button to stay up to date with any future videos. Amnesia the Bunker is the most recent in a long-running series of popular horror games in the Amnesia franchise. Released in June 6, 2023, developed and published by Frictional Games, this survival horror took the Amnesia you're used to a whole new level. Throughout this video, we'll be breaking this game down and taking a look at the Big 7: graphics, gameplay mechanics, story, character development, audio, replay value, and my own personal enjoyment to build a detailed review and ultimately decide, was it good? I'm going to be following a new format in this video that focuses mainly on reviewing the game at hand and less on the video game summary itself. So without further ado, let's review. Amnesia the Bunker is based during the events of World War I somewhere in northern France. From the very beginning until the very end, the bunker perfectly encapsulates that feeling by throwing you right into the trenches at the start for an intro sequence and spending the remainder of the game in the bunker itself. The graphics in this game are super well done, and while the average graphics might be disappointed, I think that the given graphic style perfectly reflects the style of game that Amnesia is aiming to be. If you've played previous Amnesia installments, it's very easy to recognize that the developers aim to stay true to the iconic feel of the Amnesia IP, and I believe they succeeded. Amnesia is meant to be a dark, mysterious, anomalous survival experience, and by adding the gritty living conditions of the no man's land trench warfare of the First World War, they captured that feeling very well. The trench sequence does a very good job of grasping that desperate feeling of open war zone uncertainty while making your way through the mucky debris-filled excavation. Meanwhile, the bunker itself captures a much more claustrophobic horror experience of being trapped inside an unfamiliar labyrinth of corridors and dead ends while being hunted by the unknown. The interior of the bunker is extremely well done, from map design and scheming out progression to all the little details littered around the playable area that really make the bunker feel like a place that was lived in and operated out of. Mix all of this with the intended gritty and dark graphic style of the game, and this makes for a butt-clenching experience. Typically in 2024, it isn't uncommon for modern video games or films to get shunned for being too dark with the intent of hiding poor graphics design or CGI. The horror franchise in particular catches a big break here, as conveying a dark atmosphere generally instills that feeling of isolation and hopelessness. If done correctly, that can add a devastating amount of immersion to the intended experience, and this is something that I particularly enjoy about the bunker. The atmosphere is built to be so rich and engaging that around every corner, I found myself feeling more and more desperate to grasp for resources to keep the lights on for that temporary relief. What? Oh, fuck, I fucked it up right at the end. The atmosphere is built to be so rich and engaging that around every corner I found myself feeling more and more desperate to grasp for resources to keep the lights on for that temporary relief from what's lurking in the shadows. One of my favorite experiences in the bunker easily has to be the toned down, more realistic style of interacting with items and terrain, once again fitting perfectly with the Amnesia IP. Moving through the game, most items you interact with have multiple steps to using them or a charging feature to activate them. Some examples are having to manually swing doors open and closed, having to take a cap off bandages to use them, and having to manually light Molotovs before throwing them, and even having to manually eject your spent ammo cartridges and load them back into your revolver one at a time, rather than some speedy quick reload like Call of Duty. All of this and more left me with a constant feeling of urgency, the need to constantly stay healed or reloaded because in a pinch I may not receive a second chance. On top of that, the bunker does an amazing job of giving you just enough of what you need to scrape by, greatly adding to that feeling of hopelessness, truly making this feel like a gritty fight for your life experience and forcing you to scrounge the whole map in search for anything possible to continue surviving.
I guess I can't open you either. Okay. Oh, it's coming out of that hole, dude. Oh, okay. Alrighty. Yeah.
On the topic of the map, When you first get thrown into the bunker, you are left with absolutely no idea where to go, other than a tip that you'll need explosives and some tools to escape. A big part of the bunker's unique experience is that it doesn't give you a one-size-fits-all direction to follow. It aims to force you to hopelessly run around in the dark like a headless chicken as you piece together tools and clues to streamline your escape. One person might get lucky and follow the exact path they need, or if you're anything like me, you'll be forced to backtrack a million times until you eventually have the whole layout memorized through repetition. Regardless, the mechanic of starting with a relatively blank canvas map, mixed with the need to constantly scrounge for materials, forces you to explore each independent section to piece together missing map pieces and loot supplies to keep you breathing for just a few more minutes. Just remember to be cautious of what you can carry. Amnesia the Bunker has an inventory management system that's not entirely unique, but one that is very effective, giving you extra inventory slots as you progress through the bunker, but spaced out enough that it left me having to constantly worry about prioritization of items and equipment. As you move through the bunker, you gain access to many different tools to help you navigate your challenges, like a flashlight, pocket watch, gas mask, lighter, ratchet, and more, which all take up their own independent inventory slot, forcing you to have to gamble on what you feel may be necessary when you leave your safe room, and making the bag upgrades feel like a fresh of breath air.
Is this a chest? Can I get in this? No? Ah, worth it. Okay. Let's, As what? What the f-
Before capping off the gameplay mechanics section, we can't move on without talking about the creature and some notable combat mechanics. For starters, what the f is that thing? The development team did such a good job at making absolute nightmare fuel as they always do. The monster is quite simple in mechanics, attracted to noise, dislikes extended time in the light, travels through a tunnel system that it presumably made throughout the bunker to get from place to place quickly, and as far as we know from the game, it's impervious to kinetic trauma, with gas, explosives, revolver and shotgun cartridges only slowing it down and adding to that helpless feeling of being in a constant fight or flight situation. Even though there's no time limit, this feature sort of instills an artificial clock in your head, as once you run out of resources, your time becomes extremely limited. It's at this stage in writing this script for this video that I realized I didn't really talk about the monster in the graphics section earlier. So rather than going back and finding a spot for it, let's just squeeze it in here while we're on topic. Our first look at the monster, while yes, is complete nightmare fuel, it actually isn't anything too far out of the ordinary from what we're used to seeing in the Amnesia franchise, sharing some similarities to the ghouls we see in earlier installments, meaning that the contamination that this poor soldier ingested is reminiscent of the substance in the past, which we know distorts the inflicted, causing nightmares, insanity, amnesia, and primal hysteria. Looking at its anatomy, we clearly see an adaptation to the feet, unless our afflicted here just already had large feet to begin with. But looking at the comparison of the calves and legs, it's safe to assume some mutation occurred here. We also see long mutated claws extended from the toes. A neat detail here is the blood texture put around the base of these claws, showing how they likely were grown within and forced out during the mutation process. Moving upward, as stated previously, the calves and upper legs seem to not have undergone much development, like a gym bro who skips leg day. Not too much to note here other than the necrosis seen in the tissue, also seen throughout the whole body. The same applies to the torso, which appears to have undergone minimal mutation, besides some elongation and girth added to the ribcage area. If I had to guess, this would be an adaptive mutation needed to support enlarged organs. We also see a nice touch of flavor here with a bayonet pierced right through the torso and poking out the back. Getting to the top of things, this is where stuff begins to take quite a turn, with the neck and head increased in size and girth. The face has sunken eyes, but the jaw is transformed into something much more primal and sinister. The neck likely increased in size to compensate for the extra weight of the bone density added to the skull, and for the fact that this creature is very top-heavy, generally forcing it to travel quadrupedally, to ease off some of the gravitational pull of that thick-ass noggin. The last thing we'll look at here are the arms, which have undergone extreme elongation and sprouted some deadly claws. As we said, this creature travels mainly quadrupedally, needing the longer arms in order to support that mode of transport. I would say it's surprising to see the lack of increased muscle mass needed in the shoulders and triceps to support that kind of weight and movement, but taking in account of how necrosis and decay has taken over the entire body of this creature, it's likely losing or has lost most of its healthy tissue development, fitting into the more primal strength style like the Russian sleep experiment. The claws should be pretty self-explanatory, used for mauling prey and digging tunnels for transportation and ambush. One last thing I'd like to cover here before proceeding is the Roman tunnel encounter. This section easily has to be one of my favorite in the entire game, and I couldn't resist bringing it into light, or lack thereof. This section throws you into the Roman tunnel's excavation site, where the French were digging in order to attempt to reach German lines. In doing so, you across ancient and unknown architecture. As you make your way through the story, you find yourself needing to brave this area of the map to acquire a necessary item. In doing so, you encounter one of your French comrades stricken by the beginning effects of the infliction. Having gone mad and roaming around in this dark, fog-filled zone, you find yourself having to carefully navigate through, with this shotgun-wielding maniac speaking to you cryptically in the shadows. This section does a fantastic job of really pushing that feeling of losing your mind into the player as you're faced with hallucinations of movement in the dark, unsure which one is the real threat. Now, moving out of the gameplay and mechanics section, let's dive into the story a bit. Amnesia the Bunker is pretty well alike most, if not all, the previous installments, in the sense that you're thrown into a time frame outside of your own, and spoon-fed a spooky story in the form of letters, notes, and books, eventually piecing the story and lore together the further you press on. I've always admired this sort of storytelling over most others because it enables you to really lock in and take what you want from the experience. Maybe you're a casual player who just wants to experience the horror aspect and try to survive. Or maybe you're like me, who really likes taking the information available and trying to piece it all together for a more broad understanding. No matter, this game has what you need. Amnesia is a franchise drowning in lore for you to discover, but at the same time, you can play Amnesia the Bunker, for instance, and have a fun horror experience just running through the bunker and escaping the monster. I love how Amnesia the Bunker has a very well thought out story from start to finish, with intriguing notes and logs to find from numerous soldiers' points of view stationed at the same bunker, so it's not just one comprehensive tale split into sections, but rather a series of experiences that we as the player are expected to put together from the days leading up to the current events that we play, allowing you to get a full grasp on what each soldier experienced as things fell apart. Moving into the next topic, character development, we actually don't have a lot to work with, unfortunately. And that doesn't mean we have nothing, we just have little to nothing. To save me the time of sifting through hours of footage to recall what the notes said, I'll be using the trusty Amnesia wiki page to freshen us up on what we know. Henri is a young French soldier drafted in the First World War in order to aid the struggle of repelling the German forces. Along the way, he made good friends with Augustin Lambert, who goes on to become the main antagonist. And that pretty much sums it up. Everything else we learn in the game is based around the current phenomenon, and we learn quite literally nothing else about Henri. He's simply just a driver to progress the story and uncover the mysteries of the bunker, which is quite unfortunate, as I would have loved to see more of a fleshed out background to make us really have a reason to want the best outcome for our protagonist, or perhaps some more screen time of the friendship between Henri and Lambert, to really pull you into the world and make you feel a bit more remorse about the loss and slow mutilation of your friend. Unfortunately, we get neither of these options. So while the point of the game is to escape alive, what's the point? Other than an unnamed wife the Amnesia wiki claims he has, it seems like the war is all that Henri has going for him. Perhaps it may be best that he did meet an untimely demise with his fellow soldiers and the bunker stays sealed. Forever. That wouldn't make for a very enticing game though. So moving on to a lighter topic, let's cover the sound and music. Diving right into the soundtrack, we have 12 tracks stretching just over 35 minutes in length, composed by Mikko Tarmia, who we also have heard on the original soundtrack of Amnesia Rebirth. Being a horror game, all of these 12 tracks are primarily composed of eerie ambient sounds and music, with a couple notable action tracks titled Filthy Little Rats and Hunted, respectively, which both go unbelievably hard. Mikko Tarmia did such a fantastic job utilizing different and unique sounds throughout this album to really capture the isolated echoing hallways of the interior of the bunker. There's not much more I could ask for in terms of a well-fitting soundtrack that amplifies the experience it's intended for the way this album does. As for the rest of the sound effects, everything else is very well done. I don't really have much to say about this part. The only thing I recall really standing out to me is the echo effects of shooting your firearms indoors. It really added to the intense experience of shooting at the monster or shooting a lock off of a door. Guns back in this time frame didn't have the technology we see in modern firearms, so it's no doubt that shooting a World War I revolver in a tight concrete corridor would leave your ears ringing. Other than this, nothing else really stood out as noteworthy. The sound effects were clearly all well done, and while nothing else particularly caught my attention, nothing seemed bad or out of place either.
I still have 2 bullets. How do they want... How am I supposed to jump over that? Oh, I don't want to jump over that, man. Okay, I'm gonna do it. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Go. Fuel. Wait. Okay, wait. I feel like... What just happened there?
So diving into the 6th category, we take a look at the replay value. After beating the events of the bunker for the first time, you gain access to a new Game Plus feature which incorporates new monster behavior, a hardcore health system, randomized dog tag and locker locations, reduced safe room, and even revokes your access to having your starting revolver at the beginning of the game, making for a new experience that takes what you knew and raises the stakes significantly. That being said, does this game have replay value? Yes. It does, technically. However, even with the new behavior of the ghoul, I feel like a large part of the experience is that beginning half of the game, wondering what the hell you're dealing with, and dodging around in the shadows, skulking out of fear. The new Game Plus, while being much more challenging, steals that initial experience from you, as you have already uncovered the mystery and built up to get over that initial fear of the ghoul. Adding on to this, after the new Game Plus, there's no further way of playing the game with any new features, meaning that the variety of replay is capped at 2. Of course, you could play the game as many times as you like, but I feel like any gameplay after the first unique playthrough will never feel the same, knocking pretty much all immersion from the experience. Taking a look at the final category of the Big 7, overall enjoyment, please remember that this category is completely subjective to my own personal experience with the game and will vary from player to player. My overall experience with this game was overwhelmingly positive. As you could probably tell from my very positive review, this game just has so much going for it. Every feature of the bunker has been so appropriately sculpted to fit and enhance the intended experience, which led me to have such an immersive and impactful playthrough that left me with nearly nothing negative to say about it.
I hate that I can't see anything in front of me right now. I wanna use my light so bad, but when I pull the string it attracts the monster, and I know he's down here. I just don't know where. Oh, it's like right in front of me. Oh, it's right there! Alright, we're going. Yeah, don't worry about it. I'm not sweating. Yeah!
Hello there.
Now, pushing the breakdown out of the way, let's wrap up this review by taking a look at our numbers for each section. I'll be mixing it up a bit for my first video, as rating each section out of 10 gave too much leeway between an average and an exceptional rating. That being said, moving forward, we'll be revising our formula to rate each category out of 5. 5 being very positive, 4 being positive, 3 being perfectly average, 2 being negative, 1 being very negative, and 0 meaning that literally anything could have been better. A little twist though is that I'm adding a super secret 6, meaning that this is absolutely perfect and any changes to it would ruin the experience. That means that this new review formula can actually go over 100% to a total of 120%, assuming every category scored a 6 out of 5. Do keep in mind that these 6 out of 5s won't be thrown around so lightly, Just as it would take a lot for me to rate a 0, it would need to be a groundbreaking experience to land a 6 out of 5 in a category. Now, with that little disclaimer out of the way, I left graphics with a sturdy 5 out of 5. Everything about the graphics fits the Amnesia IP so well, and they did such an amazing job sculpting the sandbox to feel very immersive to the World War I trenches. The map, weapons, items, and monster design all fit extremely well into the experience. Nothing felt out of place, poorly done, or rushed, making Amnesia at the Bunker a very immersive experience that you can get sucked into for hours. Gameplay mechanics gets an identical score of 5 out of 5. Just as I said previous, everything in Amnesia the Bunker feels so necessary. The monsters' mechanics are simple and easy to grasp, but engaging to deal with, and the item and weapon mechanics make it feel like there's always a need to be prepared, because death could be around any corner. I hate to sound like a broken record, but I also gave the storyline a 5 out of 5. I absolutely loved the vibe of the World War I setting. The isolated and helpless feeling of being locked away in an unfamiliar bunker with a mutated monster, and how the Amnesia games have a very successful way of telling a story through drip-fed notes and logs, leaving you to slowly piece together the mystery for yourself. Something I wasn't so generous with, though, was the character development. As you probably recall, I harshed on this category more than the rest. The development of our main protagonist was underwhelming to say the least, and left me not really caring about who I was playing. I found myself much more enveloped in the story and world around me that I'd often forget that I wasn't just some nameless protagonist placeholder. For this reason, I decided to give this section a 1 out of 5. Listening to the sound and music, I placed this section at a 4 out of 5. I really did love the work of Mikko Tarmio in this original soundtrack. It was full of well-sculpted ambience and a couple suspenseful action tracks for when things got intense. But upon reviewing the album over and over again, it didn't quite feel deserving of a 5 out of 5. The next two sections will be pretty short and sweet. I imagine from my analysis earlier on replay value, you could likely assume that I would rate this section with a 3 out of 5. A perfectly average replay experience. And you'd be correct. Still worth a second playthrough, but nothing mind-blowing. And to wrap everything up nice and pretty, my overall enjoyment was a 5 out of 5, bringing us to a total of 28 out of 35, leaving us with a solid 80% on Amnesia the Bunker. Thank you very much for tuning into this review. If you enjoyed it, please consider leaving a like and subscribe so you don't miss any future videos. And while you're at it, be sure to drop a comment leaving any feedback or what you would have rated this game and why. But for now, that's all I have for you guys, so we'll see you next time on the Asher Review HQ.